All right. Hello, my renegades. Welcome back to Rogue Radio. My name is Sarah Jane, and today is a Pedo-Files update on Ian Watkins, and I have here with me Investigative Walker. She chooses to stay in audio and not video. That is for her safety, so we are going to respect that. So hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you dropped into my Instagram and was like, oh, did you know about this? I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, when I first came across this case and I seen the video of him, I didn't really watch the video. I figured that he was a rock star who died at a something tragic, an OD or a car crash or something. And then I actually clicked on the video that was on, I think, Channel 4 News in 2009, and they were discussing his story. And I was like, holy shit, this is really bad. This is horrible. And then it kept appearing for some reason. Every video just kept appearing for some reason. And I was like, well, something doesn't make sense. So out of my own thing, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a YouTube video out of this and discuss it and get some actual court documentation. And, put the court documentation in the description being like, if you guys choose to look at the court case, you can, but your discretion advised. It is very disturbing, and it deals with sexual assault, right? And I was going to leave it at that. But then I started looking at a lot of other things too. I started noticing these people who were obsessed with him, who would make countless Twitter, Instagram, every social media post just boosting about this guy and how handsome he was. And then I even encountered some of them, and it was like they were always defending Ian Watkins. They always defended him. And then I started noticing somebody from the UK, they would blackmail and extort money from actual victims and just, vulnerable people online. And I started noticing this more and more and more. And some of the people, some of the victims of this person would send me screenshots of what they were demanding. And I even confronted this person, and they just kept lying about it and lying about it and lying about it. This person is still blackmailing and extorting money online, and they use it for their own purpose. And also too, from what I have gathered, is that they send that money to somebody else who sends it to somebody else who then gives it to Ian Watkins. Now, I can't 100% prove that. It's all just hearsay. But I definitely was in complete shock that this guy is still receiving money while in prison. He still receives lots of letters from prison. And what really shocked me is that I'm in Canada, you are in the US, right? The whole cell phone fiasco. We know for sure that pedophiles do not get cell phones.
Yeah, no, never.
Yeah,
Never.
I was even talking to some people who were in Wakefield. And they were like, pedophiles don't get cell phones. A prisoner would rather be raped and burnt alive or even tortured than give a pedophile a cell phone.
Yeah.
Something is definitely spooking them about this guy. Because a guard, whatever, if they're telling their story and they worked with this dude, they're going to be like, yeah, I worked with him. He's a pussy. He doesn't fight. He's just there. He's just a big wimp, right? And when I was looking into this case, I figured that was the thing, right? When I looked into it, I found out that his followers have a shrine. I found out that
I don't know if we talked about that, but yeah. Okay.
I'll definitely send you a pic of the shrine for sure. They have a shrine. They blackmail and extort people. I have talked to some of Ian Watkins' victims. There was one person who was 17 years old when he was 28. From what they told me, they had a very bad drug addiction because one of their family members passed. And he was going out with them when she was 17 and he was 28, which isn't normal in the UK. I've asked everybody who I know from the UK who lives in the UK. They're like, no, that's absolutely not normal. I even have some friends in Wales. They're like, that's not normal. And from what this person has told me, and they have pictures, is that they went over to his apartment in London. He told them he was going to be right back. The apartment only had a mattress on the floor, didn't even have a table, didn't even have a couch, didn't have any of those, didn't have food in the fridge, just
This
a
guy's
mattress on the
supposed to be
floor.
rich.
Yeah. And it's one of those apartments where you have to have a key to get in and out. So he leaves them there for 3 weeks.
So these are the victims that are left in the apartment.
Yeah, this is one of them. She was left for 3 weeks, and the only reason why she got out was because of a neighbor who let her out, who called the landlord. And she told me after that, after he did that to her, she was like, I'm never talking to you again. How could you forget about me? Blah, 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 blah. While his cult went after her after she tried going public with that story and said that it was her fault that he got addicted to drugs. I'm like, I highly doubt that. He's a 28-year-old man.
Well, he started that from the beginning when he started liking young girls. It wasn't her fault at all, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. The more I started digging into this story, the more it started coming out. There was a man who's a grown-up now. He's an awesome guy, has a child and everything. And he had to witness one of his friends be groomed by Ian Watkins. He was going out with this person. She's in jail. She was one of the mothers who got put in jail. And he was like, Ian Watkins would send me threatening texts. He would taunt me. I was sending everything to the police and being like, my friend is being groomed by this guy. And he was giving the police all the information. The police turned up at his door and started laughing at him. He was 15 years old at that time.
Yeah. Because when we talked, I think we talked about this, we kind of both came to the same conclusion that this is probably trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, and it is a big business, and it does kind of bleed into politics and the law enforcement. So in my head, I'm like, this doesn't surprise me, but it's still awful because my heart goes out to that person that did not even get the chance to be believed or heard. So
exactly, it breaks my heart too. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, what else was he into? So I got a hold of somebody who works in that type of market.
What?
I had to gain in that, just like drug trafficking and stuff like that. Reddit is crazy. And I had to build this person's trust, and I was just blatantly honest about what I was doing because I want to do a documentary on this dude. And he was like, oh, okay. So I asked him about sex trafficking and how it works. From what he told me, because he's not into it, but it doesn't only deal with adults and teenagers, it also deals with little kids.
Infants.
Yeah, infants. And what's really disturbing is the fact that he was like, you know how people pay to see people in pain or getting tortured? They will also do that to an infant too. And that is a lot of money. I'm like, oh my God. Holy shit. When he told me that, my throat just went into my stomach. I was about to throw up, and I'm like, holy crap. And I'm like, so adrenochrome, any of that? He goes, well, that's kind of bullshit, because it would be where I'm selling it, and it would definitely be in the hands of sex traffickers. It's not in there. What people are being paid to see is to see a person or a child to be extremely abused for a long period of time, because that's their kick.
Yeah. Yeah. I have done a docu-series about child trafficking, and it is, I almost couldn't go through with it because it is
Yeah.
morbid. It is disturbing what they do to these children.
Yeah, no, and I was just like, oh fuck, okay. I didn't want to delve in deeper and stuff just because of how disturbing it is.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, that person who you want to do a documentary on, I've heard his name around that type of circle. And it could be another person entirely. But if I were you, I would just stick to the fact that you were just going to interview him. Because if people, like, that's the thing, even in prison, like, somebody would want to make a name and they'd assault that dude. They would actually kill him. He's in Wakefield.
Yeah.
Guards turn their backs on pedos all the time. You even hear it on their news, in the newspapers and stuff. Why hasn't this guy been touched?
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
I was told not to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, but this kind of has the kind of same vibe, to be honest.
It really does. I think Jeffrey Epstein, he was still a part of it, but he wasn't a part of what Ian Watkins could be a part of. And this is all speculation, but for the fact that Ian Watkins did what he did, that doesn't just come out of nowhere. Doesn't just pop out, oh, I'm going to take some methamphetamine and then I'm going to turn into a child predator. It doesn't happen that way.
No.
I've asked hundreds of psychologists, just people who understand drug addiction, pedophilia, everything, and I showed them the case file and what he did, and they're like, yeah, for like just a second opinion, right? I'm doing a documentary, and they're like, this guy is a sociopath or a psychopath. And then I offered them to see interviews of Ian Watkins talking and everything that he does, to his body language, right? Because there's like hundreds of interviews where he's talking to somebody and, you know, you can see his full body and how he's using it. And they're like, he is showing signs of being a psychopath because, first of all, he never blinks his eyes. He's emotionless. His voice is very monotone, but not to the point where you notice. Only a psychologist would notice. Right. Also, too, there were a couple of videos where his bandmates would yawn, and you'd see the other bandmates yawning back, right? It takes a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, but you see them yawn back. When you see somebody yawn back, that means that they have empathy. He never yawns back.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of markers. Also, too, you can tell that he has a very high sense of self about himself.
Narcissistic.
Yeah, narcissistic. That's what I mean. Like, he's very narcissistic, sociopathic, just a scary dude. And also, too, there are some criminals in Wales that have heard about his name, because I looked into the case more, and then within the case, he had, and it wasn't just for personal use, he had a ton of methamphetamine and GHB. If nobody knows what GHB is, GHB is a date rape drug. And then when I looked at criminal statistics and everything like that, around Wales, Pontypridd, everywhere like that, for some reason, when he moved there, it was like GHB and went on the rise. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at missing kids. I'm looking at everything that I possibly can. for some reason, certain areas of where he would go, there was a spike in missing children.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm looking into it and I'm like, what the hell? And then I looked at all of his properties and what he has his name under, and like the date of birth he was born, and like his first and last name, where he resides, everything. And I started going on Google Earth and I started tagging them all. And I showed my friend who works in security. He knows a lot about law. He knows a lot about policing. And I showed him the map. I'm like, here's the addresses. Prove me wrong on this. And he was like, you just stepped on a possible sex trafficking ring. Because everywhere that you pointed at on the map of all of his addresses, every single thing that he owns and that you double checked, and he even quadruple checked for me. He was like, for some reason, there was a spike in missing children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, holy fucking shit. And that's the thing. I also found out in the UK, you can own property, a bank account, every single thing, even pay taxes under a fake name. You don't have to use your real name.
That's really strange. Why would anyone want to do that? They're shady, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I'm like looking at his family crest. I'm looking at every single thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. He has a family crest. It's on Google, last name Watkins. Looked it up. And I'm like, could this be the possibility that he might have a little connections? Because people who were into that type of world, who do the things that he wanted to do, you have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who trusts you. You can't just make friends.
Right.
So I came up with something, and I'm like, he has to have been doing this for years.
Yeah, in order for him not to be untouched in jail, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to know somebody who's like, screw this dude. He has to. And the more it comes up, the more the rabbit hole keeps going larger and larger and deeper and deeper. The video that I sent you of the lady who reported him, that video was supposedly done in 2011. And I'll send you some screenshots of what she texted and everything. And kudos for her for calling the police. Right on. I appreciate that. Thank you. You put him in jail. But what I don't understand is why you made that video where you were telling the person who was interviewing you for that video how you were sexually molested and you molested your sister. And that was done in 2011. She also
How old was
made
she
a
when she was younger? Did she say like her age?
I think she said that she was 7 or 6 years old. And then she did it to her younger sister.
Yeah. That is generational. It's something that I'm sure that, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not bad. Of course it is. But some people in certain environments, they don't know what they're doing. So they think it's normal because molestation runs in the family. But I understand completely what you're saying. It is awful.
Right. So like I've been around other kids who were sexually assaulted as kids, but they knew it was wrong, so they stopped it and they ended up getting the help and everything. But it still affects them, and they're adults. The next thing Joanne did was she confessed on Twitter, because I have screenshots of her old Twitter accounts, everything like that, that she went up to Ian Watkins' lawyer, asked why he got the sentence he got, and she's not a bad person, and that she wishes his sentence was lower.
His ex-girlfriend?
Yeah, Joanne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like I don't know if he was grooming her and he knew about her sexual assault. I don't know if he's very manipulative, because there were a lot of people coming after her who supported Ian Watkins, who still support Ian Watkins, and they were really harassing her. And I've heard some other people who were like, no, she is just as fucked up as he is, and she should have been in jail. And the only reason why she called the police was because he broke up with her. I heard that from several sources.
Yeah. I think that's what the police originally thought as well, because he was famous and she was a sex worker. So, in that society, like, who would you believe, sort of thing?
Exactly. And I noticed he has a pattern. Joanne was the perfect victim for him because she was a sex worker, she was a drug addict, she had a lot of issues. He picked a lot of women with issues, with a lot of drug addictions, a lot of this, just a lot of self-esteem issues. He would purposely pick those because he knew he could push them to do whatever he wanted them to do. And then he picked some women who didn't bore him, but who wouldn't do it. So it was like he had a mask for certain people. With people like Joanne and like the other ones who were probably groomed and abused by him too, he had a mask with them. With his friends, his girlfriends, he had a mask with them. With colleagues, he had a mask with them. Everybody who was in his life, he had a certain mask for. That's what a sociopathic narcissist does.
Yeah.
And I started noticing that. I'm like, okay, people who were drug addicts or, you know, had a hard life. Police didn't believe them. So it was like, he knew he could get away with anything. This took 5 years for him to be put in jail. 5 years. And even then, it was probably happening before because of how skilled this guy was. The only reason why he was put in jail and he got caught was because he ended up getting addicted to drugs and he got sloppy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think because the episode that I have made about Ian Watkins was all surface level stuff. And I thought it was the end of the story. But then when I met you, I was like, holy shit, there's so much more. There's so much more to the iceberg. And it's baffling. It really is. And it does kind of, all the evidence that you have given me personally, it does kind of point to the fact that he wasn't just taking drugs and having sex with kids or victimizing and manipulating people. He was actually building his ring. So in order, if he did go to jail, he'd still be able to run his business.
Exactly. So I did some more research and I talked to a person who knows about secret societies, cults, the other side of the internet, the darker side. And I started telling him about this case. And he told me, he was like, well, he's a part of this group. I know that for sure because of his tattoos, what he is saying in these interviews, what he is hinting at. So I'm like, holy crap, can you please, like, what do these members have to do in order to become a member? He told me they have to withdraw from God, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. He was like, they have to participate in extreme sexual acts. He did. He filmed his sexual activity. He put it on Motherless. He put it on other things. He was like, the next step is to sexually abuse a child. He did that. The third step is murder. He hasn't done that step yet. Fourth step, he has to lose absolutely everything. Hasn't done that yet. The fifth and final step, he has to do all that activity to a newborn child to become a full member. And what these like the Draculas, this guy calls them, you know, the Akashas, you know, the ones who are the leaders of the groups, they call their underlings, you know, the people who are below them, minions or underlings who want to be where they are and stuff. And yeah, when you're a full member, the females have a actual branding, like a cattle branding on their inner thigh.
Yeah. Kind of
And
like
then the
how
male.
Nixium was, right? Wasn't it called
Yeah,
Nixium?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was kind of like Nixium. And then for the males, on the most sensitive part of their foot, they have to get it there. And it's to prove to the other members that you were a full-pledged member.
Sweet Jesus.
Yeah. And these people, I don't know if it's fetish that they have, but to them, they are real vampires. Which is like, I don't know if it's like a fetish. I don't know if it's like a weird thing that they do.
To be honest, when it comes to extreme fetishes, it can bleed over to very disturbing things. So it could be both, to be
Yeah, that's
honest.
what I'm guessing. And then, right, so like, I know that this group, they're into, you know, sacrificing, you know, satanic shit. And like, when I was younger, I was into witchcraft and, you know, Aleister Crowley, all that type of stuff, right? Even delved into like, you know, Satanism when I was younger. And from
Not
what
now,
I've
are you?
researched, yeah. So from my research and everything that I have since I was a kid, everything that I have done in my craft, and even asking, you know, people who study the craft and who study it and everything, there is no child sacrifice in any of it.
So,
But to this group, there could be.
okay.
So I'm guessing is that they don't know what they're doing. They put in the whole vampirism thing, and it's a fetish thing. And because they're like all dark and right, and they believe in human sacrifices, that's what they do. But when you look at ancient texts and you start reading about ancient books, and you start translating it, because back then, do you know that a goat was called a kid?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so a goat, especially a young goat, they call them kids. Right? So you would sacrifice a goat. You wouldn't actually sacrifice a child. So you go back into like ancient texts and stuff and like what certain animals mean and what this means, and you start translating it. Oh, okay, that's a goat. Oh, okay, that's a lamb. Oh, okay, so the goat has to be smart. Okay, well, this goat is smart and he's like, you know, of age. So I'm going to sacrifice this goat. He's fairly young, but he's a smart goat. And I'm going to, you know, use everything of this goat and then either have a stew or a pot roast or whatever. And then I'm going to give it to my other members. Right. So you were sacrificing, but it wasn't what these people think sacrificing is. That's what I mean with like Satanism, and the way that this group is doing it isn't what people think it is.
From what I know about Satanism, it has always been about cannibalism and ripping apart mothers and children and bestiality.
Yeah, when you really look into Satanism, and I mean like actual like Satanism, and you talk to a Satanist, they're going to be upfront of what they believe in. Right? You can even look up like the Satanic Bible. You can talk to people from the Satanic Church. You can do this, you can do that. Like there are just people who were like 100% honest about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to study this type of stuff because I thought it was all cool, right? And it was like, no, it's a lot of meditation and a lot of meals. And A lot of self-love and stuff like that. That's what I got from it. But so I could definitely see somebody like this group, somebody who is like Ian Watkins, turning it around and turning it into cannibalism, child abuse, sacrificing, just being a horrible, evil person and doing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that there isn't evil entities out there, because there is, right? We have good, we have evil, right? There are people who are in between. Have you ever heard of the saying where I've seen a bad man do good things, but I've seen a good man do horrible things?
Mm-hmm.
So, right, if you look at everybody in the world, everybody is a different shade of gray.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to take that into some entities. Some entities, they're not entirely evil, but they're not entirely good.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not your pet. They're not your slave. Because that's when they get angry and that's when they want to hurt you and shit. But they're really evil entities who do want to hurt humanity and who do want to cause chaos and absolutely destroy us. Absolutely, there is.
Mm-hmm.
And was Ian Watkins a part of that? Possibly. And I'm not denying it, because every step that he took in his life in order to join this group, they add up. I also asked some people who were a part of his life in 2004. It was like he completely did a 180. It was like all of a sudden he was this great guy to be around, loved being around this person, and then he did a complete 180, and it was like that's when he got into drugs. That's when he started doing a bunch of other shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
His
that's
father
probably where he got.
His father was a pastor at one time.
Yeah. His father was a pastor. And I started looking at that and everything. And I'm like, okay, so when he was growing up in a fairly small town. Right? I'm like, okay, everybody, because if you've ever lived in a small town, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody's stuff. Everybody knows each other's secrets, right? Well, I started asking around this small town, and they were like, well, if he was ever sexually assaulted or abused, people would know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would know about it. But he wasn't. He actually had a good life. Like, he had a trusting relationship with his mother, with his father. He had a really close relationship with his grandfather and his mother, where they were the closest, but he still loved his dad, right? So, that's the thing. When you have a close relationship like he did with his parents, if he was actually ever abused or sexually assaulted, he would actually go to his parents and tell them what happened, because the relationship was that close. Even if he was being groomed, it would eventually come out. So I'm looking at his behaviors. I'm starting to notice the fact that he could have been like this for a very long time, and that he probably met some kids who were sexually assaulted, who got him into this type of world.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's high functioning sociopaths and narcissists and stuff, he could have been a very high functioning one. And the only reason why he did what he did was because he ended up getting addicted to drugs, because to him, he could never get addicted to drugs. And then it turned out he got addicted to meth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you think that his father had anything to do with that? Just because I know that some pastors or some people in the Christian community can become pedophiles.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. When I was first researching it, I'm like, I was hearing rumors that he was sexually abused by his father, that his father had his friends sexually abuse him, this and that. And then I realized that this was coming from his fans, who were making up this fantasy, this sick, morbid fantasy. And they
Mhm.
also came up with another sick fantasy that he was going out with somebody when he was 15 and that they pegged him. That means they sexually had a dildo and then
Okay.
put it in his butt when he was 15. Found out that was complete bullshit too. So his fans, or who are the ones who blackmail and extort and who hurt people for this dude and to do anything for this dude, they're making up really fucked up stories. And it's like they want you to feel guilty for him when in fact this guy wanted to rape and murder babies.
Yeah. It's awful. Because the episode that I did on child trafficking, I think a lot of people don't really realize what that can really do to an infant. Like, you can rip the child apart. It's
Yeah.
not just something that somebody says, like, oh, it's awful. It actually happens, you know, and I just want to let the audience know that real quick.
Oh yeah, there is not only physical but mental. It's all mental too. Like one of my family members was abused and it still affects them to this day. Like they can't have an actual relationship. They have gone to therapists. They can't have sex. I have another friend who was sexually abused and she became severely promiscuous. She got therapy and help and she has 2 beautiful kids, but that forever affected her life. I know a couple of friends who can't have actual relationships and they can't have sex because it just makes them feel gross. And like they've told me that they felt like gagging afterwards.
Mm.
And then there were other friends who were like very highly promiscuous. And then when they go to therapy and they get the help that they need, they realize, okay, this is because I was sexually abused.
Mhm.
It's really, really sad. Like it is horrible. Like and that's the thing, the trauma, like you could go for years and years, and I mean years of therapy. When that happens to a child, it is lifelong trauma. And yeah, they know how to deal with certain situations better after they go to therapy and what's going to trigger them, what's not going to trigger them, and everything like that. But it is lifelong. It never goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. When it comes to someone who's been raped or sexually abused or molested, it does go one way or the other where, you know, they're very sexually deviant or even promiscuous, or they just don't want to have sex at all. They become asexual, and it's their way of protecting themselves, I guess.
It is. It's absolutely horrible. And I have Ian Watkins' court file case. It took me 3 entire months to actually read it because I had to stop because I was about to smash my phone.
Yeah.
I was like, how is this guy not being touched? How is he even okay? Like, who are these people who are talking to him and then sending him money? And I'm like, oh my God. And then when I started investigating, and I started noticing this person named Lisa Cladwell from the UK. I started noticing that she would text Ian, but every account that she had, he would just end up blocking it. Then I found out that Lisa Cladwell is now Stewie Cladwell, and he's on Twitter, and he makes multiple accounts of the libertines, and he tries to blackmail and extort money from people online and to receive naked pics.
Wow. I mean, it still doesn't surprise me because I feel like both of us have kind of dove deep into what actually makes humans this way. So, yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me, but it is still terrible. The fact that he's stealing money from other people and soliciting nude pictures, like, no.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Police have been warned about Stewie Cladwell and what he's doing and how he's grooming minors online.
Mm-hmm.
The police have been notified multiple times. I've even called the police on Stewie multiple times in the UK, being like, okay, this is what this person's doing. You have a thing on him. They won't do anything. It's because he claims disability. He claims that he's autistic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my God. No, that just made me mad.
Yeah, no, that makes me mad too. Because I'm like, do you know how many people who I know who are autistic? Like, I have a disability myself.
You do,
yeah,
bro.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I have a disability too. I don't even do this shit.
Mm-hmm. That makes no excuse. Like, nowadays, I feel like everybody thinks that a mental illness is just a trend. It's something to make them feel special. And of course, he must have jumped on that train and said, oh, I'm just autistic. I don't know what I'm doing. So a lot of people who are slightly autistic or even on the spectrum that know exactly what they're doing. They're high functioning. They have big businesses and everything. And then they don't do shit like you, bro.
Yeah, exactly, dude. I'm like, do you know how many people who are autistic who have jobs, relationships, kids, businesses, pay taxes, do what they need to do, who don't do what you do? Oh my God, dude. There was a couple of times on my Twitter I just completely just called this dude out. And then he sends his little lackeys coming after me, being like, nobody pays attention to you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, somebody's paying attention to it because people are talking to me.
Yeah.
And like, thank you for giving us information about this cult who legitimately have a shrine of Ian Watkins. I'm not even joking.
That's unhealthy. That's so unhealthy.
And that's the thing. The one woman who always sticks up for Stewie, she has a letter, I think of an H, and she's not in contact with Ian Watkins. He doesn't know who she is. He doesn't even know who this woman is. And
but she's sticking up for him.
Yeah. And she has the little H on her, and she says it's for him and her. And she's also pretended to be married to this guy and even admitted it on Facebook. People have told her that she's being catfished by Stewie multiple times.
Okay.
With evidence.
It kind of just reminds me of like all the teen girls, like the Beliebers and people who loved One Direction. Like, oh, I talked to him and, one day we're going to get married. Like, this is a grown woman, right?
Yeah, she's in her 60s. She has a grandchild.
No.
Yeah.
That's called mental illness.
Yeah. I've even tried talking to her and being like, okay, like, he's doing this, and this shit. Like, he's lying to you. It's not Ian Watkins. And then she gets all mad and huffy and puffy. And then she actually did a thing with me where she's crying. She goes, I just want everybody to leave me and Ian Watkins alone. They're all bitches. And la 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 la. I'm like, what the fuck? Whoa. Oh my God. And then Sophie.
It's gonna leave you alone, ma'am.
Sophie, she makes multiple accounts on Twitter stating how she personally knows Ian Watkins. She's even lied to newspapers multiple times. She said that Ian Watkins tried grooming her while he was in prison. Never happened. It's not in his criminal record.
Why would you want to even make make up a lie about that? Like, that's not something that you should brag about. Just be like, I was victimized by Ian Watkins. Feel bad for me. Ma'am, get a job.
Yeah. Also, too, she's also lied and said that Ian Watkins proposed to her. She's also lied and said that Ian Watkins tried grooming her child while he was in prison and like a whole bunch of other shit. I found out the actual truth.
While he was in prison.
Yeah, so it's not going to happen, especially in Wakefield and Lovers Lane. Kids are not allowed in that part of the prison at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at all. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Then I found out from other followers, because they were all ticked off with her, that she lost all her kids because child welfare took them away. And the reason why they took them away was because she literally sent naked pics to the prison, thinking that they would just automatically go to Ian Watkins, and they never did. They ended up in the prison guard's possessions, and the prison got child services involved to the point where she could never talk to her children again.
Were they naked pictures of her children?
Yeah.
No.
Of her own children. She's not allowed to be near kids. She's not allowed to talk to her kids. She's not allowed anywhere near her kids.
I will never understand it. I will never understand it.
Yeah. It's just all fucked up. And I'm like...
Children look to their parents, to adults, for safety, and here they are just screwing them over. I mean, where's her motherly instincts? Like, you don't do that.
No, you don't. When I heard about that, I was like, you sick bitch. I've even called her out on Twitter.
Yeah.
She's made multiple accounts online trying to say that I'm making fake accounts. It was like, no, I just caught you, dumbass. You're making fake accounts. And then she looks stupid, and then she feels stupid, so she gets off the internet, and then she comes back on with another fake account. It's like a rotating thing that she does.
Mm-hmm.
All this guy's followers, they have severe issues. And for some reason, they love and worship this guy. It's really weird and how obsessed they are. It was like the thing that we were talking about and how it could deal with something demonic.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely agree with it. It's like they have an obsession with this dude and he doesn't know who they are.
Yeah, I feel like it doesn't... I mean, I'm sure it doesn't matter that he doesn't know who they are. He just has supporters, and that's like the spirit of the Antichrist right there, where people follow blindly,
Mm-hmm. And I was looking into it and stuff like that, and I was looking into everything that happens in Wales, and a lot of pastors or priests being charged with child sexual abuse and everything. Like, it is literally Pontypridd, where he lived, everywhere in Wales. You start looking at the numbers and you're like, wow, those are a lot of priests who are being charged with child sexual abuse. Drugs seem to be a huge problem. Anti-socialism seems to be a huge problem, and it's been happening since, I don't know, the 1970s to the 1950s and onward. You start looking at statistics, you start looking at everything, and it was like, okay, so this guy was raised in an environment where he had to watch out for priests who were pedophiles. So he probably knew some kids in his neighborhood who were sexually assaulted, and those kids probably had connections to other people too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably had another friend group who absolutely knew who he was and knew what type of masks he would use, because they would also use those masks with people. So I'm guessing is that he probably has a group of friends who know what he's doing, what he's really like, because they are just like him. And they haven't been caught yet because they haven't been addicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would... So there's just a bunch of priests, like, around where he lives that are part of this pedophile ring, right?
Could possibly be also government, police, everything. When you start looking at UK records and how corrupt police, government, everything, and you start looking at the news records, everything, you start looking up every single thing, and you're looking at it all cynically, and you're like, there are a lot of priests being charged with sexual assault. Too many, in fact, compared to Canada and the US. You look at the UK, too many. Police who have been charged with being corrupted. Too many in the UK. Right? And we like Canada and the US, they deal with corruption, right? They get put in jail. In the UK, it was like, oh, okay, well, he's being targeted for being, I don't know, for selling drugs or for getting cell phones in the prison. And then all of a sudden the charges are dropped and the story's never heard about again.
Well, that gives me Jeffree Star vibes.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Like,
and
shut up, here's some money, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Or maybe even just threatening the family.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I was looking at cell phone crime in Wakefield prison. As soon as Ian Watkins went into prison, cell phone crime was on the rise. Drugs were on the rise. Prison weapons were on the rise. It was like it just exploded when they were dealing with it already, but not on the scale that they're dealing with it now.
Wow.
So I'm starting to add all these little news clips up, and I'm like, a pedophile I know for a fact do not get cell phones. This guy got a cell phone. And if anybody who's, been in prison in Canada or the US or even in the UK, pedophiles do not receive cell phones, not even by accident.
No.
Somebody's not going to throw a cell phone to a pedophile being like, watch this. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, even if he did have one at one time, if he were anybody else, that phone would be taken by the other prisoners or the police or
prison. And that's the thing. Like, if he offered to buy a cell phone, they'd just take the money and kill him. That's what they do. No, he has a cell phone. Doesn't happen in the real world. He's being protected by somebody or something. I don't know what it is, but as soon as that thing is discovered, I am definitely going to be holding protests.
Oh, yeah.
And like having evidence and being like, nope, I'm getting a lawyer, and being like, this guy's doing this, this, and this. I want to do the documentary first, but if I find out something and it's something that should be, broadcasted to the world, and this is why this guy's not dead in prison, I'm going to do that instead.
Yeah.
Because
it just seems like he's started a business while he was at prison, like in prison. Once he had the phone, he was able to just operate through his phone,
Exactly. And that's the thing, the whole Gabrielle girl, apparently she called the police right away and she let them know. But then when you look at the whole news thing that happened, it was like, so you talked to him for a bit to make sure it was actually him, understandable, and then you called the police and this guy knew you had a boyfriend? How does he know your number off by heart? Even if it's an easy number, you're going to forget that number, especially if you're in prison and you're an ex-meth head. You're going to forget a lot of shit. No matter how easy a number is, you're going to forget shit. That's the thing. There's a lot of missing pieces, and it's like, this needs to be looked into further.
Yeah, I should say so, because like I said, I thought I went deep, but then I met you, I was like, damn, she went deeper.
Yeah, dude, I didn't even want to...
I wouldn't even know where to start, when it came to how you research. I'm still learning how to research things, and I'm kind of grateful that I kind of ran into you.
Well, no, dude, and that's the thing, right? I'm into journalism, research, stuff like that. So when you're doing the thing that I'm doing, you have to research, you have to quadruple check, 100 times check, get somebody else's opinion to make sure that you're right, and then you have to research again. So like you have to make sure that your facts are straight. When I was doing this, at first, all I wanted to do was just a dumb YouTube video on the guy, because all I was seeing was the surface. And then I started researching more. Then I started looking at his deleted Twitter, like all his deleted posts. I'm like, okay, he's saying some things that are leading to sex trafficking, but low key. That only a sex trafficker or somebody who is into severe child abuse would know. So it's all hidden. It's like an eyes wide shut moment. Your eyes are wide, but they're shut because they don't see it. And then I started looking into some conspiracy theories and how he's linked to the Bebo suicides and how he's linked to like other
Can
things.
you explain what the Bebo suicides are?
So the Bebo suicides it was a website that everybody came together. So it was like before MySpace and everything like that. And they would listen to music. Well, these kids ended up grouping up together and they all committed suicide. I think there was around 20 of them who all committed suicide.
Oh my God.
Yeah, all at once.
Was there a reason?
No, there was no reason.
Were they depressive? Like, did they have any type of mental illness that they shared with each other that they just decided to make a pact like that?
And that's the thing. I looked into it. None of them had any type of suicide pact. None of them were suicidal. They all seemed happy. And they were close to their family members too. So if they felt suicidal and they had a close relationship, they would be like, hey, like, I feel really suicidal.
Right.
He's also linked to that. And he's also linked to, like, I sent you a link from Cambridge University.
I remember that.
Yeah, definitely read into that. He's linked to, like, the culinary family. He's linked to a whole bunch of shit.
Yeah. I would expect, to be honest, just because of what you've told me about the secret society that he may or may not be in. Or is it true that he's in it?
Yeah. And then I started looking at other stuff and like it was just all piling on. I'm like, how come nobody's been looking at this?
Because no one wants to. They're afraid.
Yeah, I'm like, am I searching up certain things that I shouldn't be searching up? Like, what the fuck? And then I started looking at his music video, A Town Called Hypocrisy. So in the Illuminati, they use the symbol of the rainbow.
Okay. Yeah.
He has that in his video.
Mm-hmm.
There's other, like, if you start going down symbolisms in the Illuminati and a bunch of other shit, you start noticing certain things that are in his videos. Now, this dude, he had creative control over all of his music videos.
Yeah.
So, like, nobody's doing the music video for him, being like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're doing it, and this is how it's going to be laid out, and blah, blah, blah. With even rock stars, pop stars, rap stars, that's what they do sometimes.
So was this before he even got into all of this? Like, before he started getting into sex with children and everything?
Yeah, 100%. All before. You look at the writing, you look at every single thing, his tattoos, who he was connected to.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of how Cardi B got into the Illuminati. Like how she would call out the Illuminati, like on her Snapchat videos, or even make jokes saying that she would sacrifice her own cousin for fame and everything. And then we do find out that, you know, she's part of it now. Like, they got the attention. And that's how So he was probably trying to catch the attention of that secret society. And maybe he knew something that someone told him, that this is how you become famous and everything like that. And at some point, when someone gets addicted, you just don't you don't give a fuck anymore, and that's probably why he's thrown in jail, because of everything that he did. He just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. In order to join the group that I was talking about, I'm pretty sure, like, low-key, they're called the Illuminati. They're like, no, that's not our name. It's something else. Yeah, it's probably something else. But, like, he followed all the steps. He got addicted to drugs, like, just out of the blue, right? And you start looking at this dude, and, like, something people would have noticed right away if he was sexually assaulted, because, like, his best friend was Lee. All his bandmates just thought when he was doing the shit before the court case came out, they literally thought it was just a drug and sex addiction, because that happens to a lot of rock stars. Drug and sex addiction is very apparent.
Common.
And yeah, very common. And that's what they thought it was. And then he goes to court and he's being charged with, like, child sex abuse, extreme child sex abuse, and extreme animal abuse. Because
we've talked about the possible bestiality I think we have.
Yeah. So it was just like, holy crap, dude. When I was looking at the court case and the court, and I had to, like, click on, like, what does this mean and everything, lawyer terms.
Mm-hmm.
Why is he being charged with this? And, like, I clicked on, like, the level of sex abuse within the court case, just to understand it and stuff, what it was. And it gives you, like, the level of degree of abuse, right? So on a scale from 1 is very low, and then on the 5 scale, it's extreme, like very, very extreme. He's at the 5 scale, extreme child sex abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with animal abuse too. So, like, there's a reason why he's in jail, and I'm betting the judge who put him in jail probably is like, he needs to spend his life in jail. And the crazy thing is that the judge who put him in jail died of a heart attack this year. And he was a fairly young dude. So I'm like, what?
Something deep going on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, that's suspicious, because this judge was fairly healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not saying heart attacks can't just happen, because they can. But a healthy judge who put somebody like Ian Watkins in prison, who is a man who is not touched in prison, and who has never been assaulted in prison, nor name called in prison, and who has friends in prison, all of a sudden that judge dies from a heart attack, and they were fairly healthy.
Yeah.
Also, in Wakefield Prison, that also happened this year, a mysterious package showed up at Wakefield Prison, just filled with clothes and stuffed toys.
Was it addressed to Ian?
They're not saying who it was addressed to, but looking at the stuffed toys, it probably came from Stewie, and Stewie is freaking out. So he's like, okay, I don't want to piss Ian Watkins off, so I'm going to send this. Because he might not be giving all the money to Ian Watkins.
Right.
Because he is using it to go to Libertine concerts, to go to Paya Royale concerts, to buy clothes, to hoard more animals, and to just fuck around with. So he's fucking around technically because he's blackmailing and extorting people for Ian Watkins, and then sending that money to the person, and then sending it to another person who sends it to Ian Watkins. Is that Ian Watkins isn't getting all his money.
Right. I would ask, like, what would he want with any money, since he is in prison? There's no use for it there.
Well, in prison, because he can buy cell phones, drugs, and weapons, and because he is young, rich, and famous, he can get more females to write the other prisoners and to send naked pics. So I asked somebody who was a prison guard, and this is my friend. He's been giving me a bunch of legal advice and everything and how to go about this.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him about receiving naked pics of women topless. He goes, those pictures are used as a currency in prison.
I see.
Yeah, they're used as a currency.
They
Pens can be
have, like, a
used.
bartering system sometimes where they trade things.
Yeah. Also, to cell phones, drugs. He can supply the cell phones and drugs and weapons. So, like, he's making a business on the inside as well as out. And also, too, when you look at the court case when he was charged and he was pretending to cry, he said, oh, these people are very dangerous. And they have people on the outside as well as they have people on the inside of Wakefield. And I would like my head on my shoulders. That was an indirect threat to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew he was going to get caught for that cell phone. That, I'm guessing, was probably done on purpose, and that was a threat to somebody. Being like, I know what you're doing. I know how you're doing it. And I know people on the inside as well as outside, and keep fucking around. You're not going to have your head on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he knows people.
Yeah. It is astonishing what people can do in prison, like even in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of such a story like this.
Yeah, no, and neither have I. When I was going into the case, looking into it, I'm like, okay, this dude has had to have been beaten up some point, where a prisoner has come out of prison being like, no, dude, I beat the fuck out of him, and he was like crying and bawling on the ground. Fuck that pedophile, right? Because it's, you know, it's something that you gloat about. You beat the fuck out of a pedophile who wanted to rape and murder babies. Right? So, like, that's a badge of honor. Even murdering is like a badge of honor in prison, especially somebody like Ian Watkins. It's a badge of honor. This guy hasn't been touched, threatened, or anything. And then he gets a cell phone. That does not happen.
No.
And then you have his little fucking minions, his little devotees, making up stories, trying to make people feel more empathetic to him and being like, oh, he was sexually molested. Oh, he was this, he was that. Finding out all of it was complete and utter bullshit. And they're the ones making those stories up to make people feel more empathetic towards Ian Watkins.
Do we know when he's getting out of jail? I mean, is he ever?
I know that I think he has an appeal to lower his sentence in 2033.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's going to be quite a while.
Yeah.
Wow. An appeal to lower his sentence in that time. Yeah, no.
I think he can apply for a couple of more appeals. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he went to prison, there was another appeal that he applied for just because his sentence was too long and the judge refused it.
Of course. Nobody wants to give any type of like mercy to a pedophile.
Yeah.
Especially somebody who wants to rape and murder babies, like you said. Like, no. If I was a judge, I'd be like, no, fuck you. Like, in front of me. I know there's etiquette in the courtroom, but I'd just be like, no, fuck you. You're going to jail for the rest of your life.
If he was doing that type of shit in the States, it doesn't matter where in the States, a judge would give him life or the death penalty.
Yep.
Off the bat.
Yep.
In Canada, he would be given life. But in the UK, it's like, I don't know what it is, but it's like with this type of shit, they like to sweep it under the rug. And it's very, very fucked up. And then when you start connecting the pieces on who he could be connected to, hypothetically, this guy has a lot of connections. He's never been touched in prison. He's never been threatened in prison. He gets a cell phone in prison. And the whole thing that you go down and you start listening and you start reading the whole thing in the newspaper, it's like he's low-key threatening somebody. This was done on purpose because he needed to say something to somebody.
Yeah.
And he knows that they're going to read the newspaper.
I see. So he's even using his groupies or his fans in order to do his bidding, try to defend what he did.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yep, it's like a big game of telephone to him right now since he can't go anywhere, do anything. And as far as his like home and like his assets, they're still there, right? Or
they're still there.
because you even told me like, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by a siren.
It's okay. I like heard it too. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, no, because you said that you think that some of his fans are living in his home. Because I remember
Yeah, I think
talking about
yeah. So when I came across that home and with his businesses, I made a joke with some of his fans because it was in worse condition from the screenshot that I showed you. So I brought it up to this fan page. I'm like, you need to tell Ian Watkins to start taking care of his property because it looks like shit. A couple of months later, I look at the property again. It looks practically fixed up. Like they actually washed the house and cleaned it and fixed it up. So I'm like, okay, well, somebody's listening. And he was probably like, you need to take better care of my house because it's starting to look like shit.
Yeah. That's a little too much, people.
Yeah, I
And
was
he doesn't
like,
even have like, I mean, I know that usually people who are like super rich here in the US, like they have guards at the gate and everything, but he looks like he has a normal house.
exactly, just completely normal, something that's not, in your face. It's just normal. And if you're a criminal and you want to be low key, you want to be as normal as possible. So nobody expects anything.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm looking at all of his properties, everything that he owns. The other ones that are like further into the woods, further into nowhere, those are really, really nice. Those look like 3 stories, well taken care of. The yards are taken care of. Everything's just drop dead gorgeous there. And I'm like, okay, so what I'm guessing is that he's probably renting some of the properties to some people who he trusts and some people who he knows aren't going to be digging through his shit. And they just rent the property, take care of it, and then he receives his money. Because at the end of the day, like if he's renting his own property and it's under his name, he could be like, yeah, no, like that's for my mom. Like she got a kidney transplant. She's taking the money.
Okay.
He could easily make that excuse.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, he has fans to do his bidding to defend him. Fans that just wash his house and make sure it looks pretty and everything. I have never heard of any type of fan do that here in the US. Like, usually, like I said, like, celebrities here in the US, like, the richer you are, the more loved you are, depending on if there's a scandal or not. And they usually have, like, gated, they live in gated communities where only certain people are allowed in. But Ian, I don't know what they do in the UK, but I mean, they just have a regular house that just, I mean, to me, that's
it doesn't make sense to me either. When I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm like, dude, like you had enough money to like live in an apartment building, which you rented where you could own
your own house.
Yeah. I'm looking at it. I'm like, dude, you so-called like the apartment where you have to have a key to get in and out, that's high security. celebrities live in the UK, live in those types of apartments, or they live in like somewhere out, right? Because they want security, because they're celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, this guy doesn't need that. So who is he being protected by?
Right.
Where he's so confident, where he's like, yeah, I don't need security because if somebody steps onto my apartment or like onto my house, tries to fuck me up, they're not going to be alive.
Right.
That's
Or
what it
is
gives to me.
right. Or is it because he knows how many fans and how much of a fan base or cult he has, he's able to trust his fans to do anything for him?
Exactly.
Because
That's what I'm guessing too.
yeah. And
Because they're not even fans of Lost Prophet. They're just fans of him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've met fans who are still fans of Lost Prophet. They're really nice. And they're like, what he did was completely fucked up. And we do not support this dude. We just like the band.
Yeah.
Like, they feel really, really torn up about what Ian Watkins did and how it fucked up the other bandmates. Also, too, I read the book Bodies and some parts of it. Ian Watkins stole all their money. They didn't receive a penny of it, and they have no idea where it went.
Mm-hmm.
So he stole all their money. And I suggest reading it because it's a really good book. I'm not going to get too into it, but like it's a really good book. It does give me some insight. I just wish that there were better dates because they knew he had a drug addiction and yet they still trusted him with the money. So I don't know if he was good at hiding his drug addiction and he ended up stealing all their money. I don't know why they trusted him with all the money. And it was just like, it's very up in the air for me. But it's a good work. It's a good book.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to look at that. So that book is about Ian Watkins himself?
It's about the rock star lifestyle in
Oh.
the UK and what this journalist went through because he worked, I forgot which journal he worked for, but it was where they interviewed rock stars and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I'm at a loss for words, to be honest. All this information is still kind of racking about in my brain.
When I started digging into this and I started looking at some conspiracy theories, when I first started digging into this, I didn't bother looking at some of the conspiracy theory connections at all. I'm like, okay, those are foo-foo. I'm going to be looking at facts before even delving into that. And then I started noticing some pieces coming together. I started noticing who he was hanging out with, who he had a relationship with. It was all calculated. I noticed with this man, he's very calculated with who he's in a relationship with and why he's in a relationship with them.
Right.
Everything's a calculated move.
Yeah. I do remember reading something from Behold a Pale Horse. It's about how the government is hiding a bunch of stuff. We all know that. But I do remember something like a method that they use in order for people to keep coming back to the same source that has given them this much attention. I forget what they call it, but they do say it's like one of Newton's laws. It's like the fourth law, one of the laws that don't really exist, but it's something that exists to the government, where since he has such a fan base and he's given them this much attention by giving them drugs, having sex with them, letting them know that they're special to him and everything, whatever he does. Since he's in jail, there's a delay in his response to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, they want more. So when there is a response, the dedication is much more stronger since they have that response. So they keep coming back for more. That's exactly what the government does when there's cash assistance and food assistance. There's a delay on their part, but that keeps more people coming to wait for whatever they need. And it's also done by celebrities and the masses.
Pavlov's Law. Have you ever heard of that?
Have not.
Yeah. So this psychologist came up with a thing where, like, he would ring a bell, the dog automatically knew, okay, I'm going to get a
Yes, I
treat.
know.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this is what Ian Watkins doing, right? Because he's already created his fan base by having sex with them, giving them drugs, and doing, being nice, being this pretend person. As soon as he rings his bell, they all come and they all do whatever he wants.
Yep, they get the treat, they go back, sit down, do whatever they have to, and then when the bell rings again, of course they come back. There's more people. Yeah.
Exactly. As long as he treats them special. And this is the thing. He treats them however he wants to treat them. He even treats them like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they still come back. They always come back to this dude. And I'm like, if somebody talked to me, and because I was reading one of the letters and how he was being snippy and sarcastic, and how he told one of the women who got this letter for him to read it again because she might be confused. And I'm like, if somebody were to say that to me, this person is not in contact with them. They completely stopped all contact with them. I'm like, if somebody were to, yeah, right. And when I read that letter, I'm like, who is this dude? Read this again so it gets into your head. I'm like, who says that to somebody? I'm like, if somebody were to say that to me, I would go up to the person being very calm, making sure that my coffee was extremely hot, because I would microwave it for like 2 minutes. That's really hot. And then you put a shitload of sugar in it. And then you throw it in his face.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm like, I would do that. And I would get charged for assault. I wouldn't care. You're like, oh my God, you would do that? I'm like, I would do that.
Yes.
Because he deserves it. You don't degrade me in that way.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of shit that he has said to some of these women who don't contact him anymore, the level of just what he thought he could get away with, what he thought he was entitled to with these women, just astounds me. I'm like, what has he ever done to you except for the fact that he nearly ruined your lives? He fucked up your guys' career, made empty promises that he never did, and then he still treated you like shit by cheating on you continuously.
Yeah. That also kind of reminds me of like how his Lost Prophets was never an emo band, was it? Or is it just a rock band?
They started out as new rock metal, and then like in their 30s, they made emo-nism. So they made emo.
Okay.
They were the first ones to come up with it. So people call him the grandfather of emo-nism, was because he made emo.
Okay. So I would say that since technically we'll just say he's an emo band for now, that Lost Prophets was. There are some people like Davi Vanity or people in the emo community like VO1I and Onision and I want to say Destry Smith, who have always gotten away with victimizing young women because of their young appearance and how they appear young and hip and all that stuff. And Davi Vanity has even said in confidence to someone that the reason why he was the way he was is because that's the only type of woman or girl that would be attracted to him, is because of the image that he kind of put out. And I'm thinking there is something going on in the emo community where I'm not saying that the emo community is bad. I wish I was a part of it when I was younger, but I wasn't. But there is something there where teens are getting victimized because of the bands that they listen to, and some of the band members are even pedophiles. And I think it's just because when the emo movement happened, it had a really big response towards teenagers, and they flocked to these people. So
Exactly, dude. Holy fuck. Like, I was a metalhead. I wasn't into emoism. I was into Marilyn Manson, stuff like that. Like, the music never spoke to me, so I, like, barely listened to it. But, like, looking at my friends now and looking at Davi Vanity, all of them, Blood on the Dance Floor, Davi Vanity and Ian Watkins were close friends.
oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Jeffree Star and Ian Watkins were close friends. The lead Gerard Way and Ian Watkins were really close friends where they had a sexual relationship.
I didn't know that either. Wow.
Every emo band knew about Ian Watkins because he started it. So they all wanted to be around him.
Right. That makes sense. But were they even surprised that all of this stuff came out?
From what I have gathered, they were not even surprised. Some of them weren't. And some of them actually became more paranoid because they didn't want to get caught.
Right.
So they started deleting everything.
Oh. That makes sense with Jeffree Star, since he was part of Davi Vanity's tour.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been people who have delved deep into the internet with torrents and the Wayback Machine that have said that he was still friends with Davi Vanity even when this stuff came out.
Exactly, dude.
He decided to move out into the West to, I don't know what he does now.
Yeah, he has his own makeup line and everything. And before I started getting into this case, I was like, oh my God. So I brought some Jeffree Star stuff, and I was gonna buy his like face cleaning stuff, right? Because I love Jeffree Star.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got into this case, and I'm like looking at my lipsticks and my highlighters that I got from Jeffree Star, and I'm like, do I even want these now? Like, was it just a thing that him and Ian Watkins had sex? And Ian Watkins was using this dude, and Jeffree Star didn't know about it. I'm like, but he was friends with Davi Vanity, and he knew about the Davi shit, supposedly. But maybe he didn't know about it. Maybe he thought it was for show. Maybe it was an act. I don't know. But I think if Jeffree Star came out with receipts and just told the truth of what he knew and what he doesn't know, people would be like, okay, I appreciate you. Thank you for telling the truth.
I don't think he will, though, because I know he says that he has shit on everyone and they know to keep their mouth shut. I mean, bro, you have literally tased people in a conference room because you thought it was fucking funny.
Yeah.
That's sociopathic to me. And I don't think he is going to come out with receipts because, for one, he was affiliated with him, so anybody's opinion would be that Jeffree Star may be a pedophile as well.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. And I think right now, since he's went into hiding with Shane Dawson, he's not going to say anything because he knows that he's done fucked up shit with people. He's even said that he's had sex with people high up in society, like with people that he couldn't even talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like looking at some of those interviews. I'm like, buddy, I know who helped you. I know who helped you get to those somewhat high up levels.
Mm-hmm.
Shut your face. Yeah. Like, and we all know it was who? Ian Watkins. Because Jeffree Star, when you look at it, before Ian Watkins, he was sort of, like he was emo, but he wasn't really out there. As soon as he meets Ian Watkins, boom, everything starts happening for him.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Dobby Vanity, same thing with My Chemical Romance, the same thing with all those emo upcoming bands.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so I know who helped you and who's the real daddy in this situation.
Yeah. Makes sense. I forgot what I was going to say. When he started becoming a YouTuber and becoming a makeup artist, I was like, oh, okay, so he's not a shit person, like he used to be a long time ago. Because I had a friend that went to one of his concerts, and I guess like he was very entitled. Like he was at the autograph table after his show, and he turned around and told everybody to back up, like, because I can understand, like, that's kind of scary and people can get anxious like that, but he turned around and screamed at his own fans, like, back the fuck up. And my friend was even like, I don't even like him anymore because he acted like that. I'm like, okay. But Jeffree Star even kind of fooled me, like, oh, so maybe he is starting to become a little bit humble. No.
Yeah, no. People like that who are in that type of circle, it's just they never learn past their entitlement, and it's because they're so willing to do anything. Like I said, Pavlov's Law, right? So Ian Watkins has the bell.
Mhm.
As soon as Ian Watkins rings that bell, who do you think is going to do anything for him? There is a bunch of people who are going to do that because they receive a treat.
Yep.
We know who the real daddy is in this situation, and it's not Jeffree Star.
No.
So at the end of the day, we know who controls everything, and if he bites the hand that feeds him, well, that hand could possibly turn him, put him down.
Yeah.
And he knows that. So he's going to keep his mouth shut.
And I feel like even if this is true where he's being one of Ian's minions, that he is maybe relaying information to him in prison for people who do speak up about stuff like this and accuse him. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, I'm looking at it. It's not only him. There's a new DJ that loves and respects Ian Watkins, who's a well-known DJ. There's a couple of artists who love Ian Watkins. Like, holy fuck. There's a lot of celebrities who absolutely love this dude, who are like, oh, he's so talented. He's la la la. And it's like, yeah, he wanted to rape and murder babies. What the fuck?
Yeah, did you guys miss that part?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm looking past that. And it's like, oh, shut the fuck up. Oh, you're fucking weird.
Right.
Like, they're just weird.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. When I first started looking into this, and I'm like, okay, does he have some like magical, some kind of thing that he's like, okay, as long as I have sex with you, I know you're going to do anything for me. So, like, here's some of my magical jizz. Enjoy it. And then he like walks away. So I'm like, what the fuck? And then I met this dude who's an obsessed fan of Ian Watkins. He goes by the name of Bill Patrick Jones. He is in the UK. At first I thought this guy was just a writer, so he was a little kooky. The more I started to get to know this dude, I'm like, okay, this guy is off his rocker. He told me, and I have a YouTube video explaining who this guy is. He told me that Ian Watkins has superpowers and that no woman could resist him.
Right.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, okay, dude, like, you're fucked up. He also told me that when he was talking to Ian Watkins already knew that he had sex with some of his groupies and asked him to describe the event. to him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm like, okay, so I am walking away from this guy. I blocked this dude, everything, and now he is on every single video on Ian Watkins claiming that he has direct knowledge of Ian Watkins and that he talks to Ian Watkins directly, in which he doesn't.
Right. Before we went live, I actually saw your YouTube video, and I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy is a complete and utter nut job. Come on, Bill. I'm trying to get my dog up on the bed. But no, dude, like, he has a lot of very screwed up fans who are willing to do anything and everything for him.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that. As long as he rings the bell and gives them the treat, they'll do it. And no matter how small that treat is, they will still do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I feel like people who are like that sociopathic, narcissistic, psychopath, they will do anything they can to use people to their own, ends. And they don't care what happens to you. They don't care what happens to people around them as long as they're standing still and still alive. It's all about looking out for Ian Watkins. For some reason, people are protecting him because of that. And I know there should be like a scientific term for that, but where people have just been enthralled by somebody who has done wrong. It's almost like when people fall in love with okay, hang on. When women have fallen in love with a YouTube murderer or Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer, there are women out there that watch the documentaries and watch the YouTube videos saying, oh, he's really attractive. Well, honey, you were probably the type of woman that they killed.
It's sick, isn't it? It's sick. And like Richard Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer, all of them, you look at it and it's like, why are you attracted? It's a thing. Even men are attracted to this. They have playing cards of these people.
Oh,
posters.
Yeah, no, I've heard of murderabilia.
Yeah. Game, like, board games, everything, right, about these people. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is insane. But no, they have their followers, dude. They have their followers, and it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And that I would kind of put Ian Watkins in that category, where women only think of him as attractive. They don't really care about what he did. Him being a pedophile, possible murderer. I don't know if he's ever murdered a child, but I mean, that's just more attractive. It's like the bad boy type, but way off the deep end where women and men that have interest and stuff like that, they deserve jail, to be honest. Like,
yeah, like they do. Like, I could understand if he just fucked up in his life and he was selling meth on the side and then he went to jail for that, right? That's a huge fuck up. I could understand if he flipped out and he did a hit and run because of fear, right? People do that, and it's very sad, but they end up going to jail for it. And a lot of the reason why they accidentally do a hit and run is because they're afraid, right? Fight or flight, right. And they just run off. People do that. It is very unfortunate, but they go to jail for that. I could understand that. I could understand him getting involved with some biker gang or some gangsters in the UK where he was like making and selling GHB, right? Because of his rock star lifestyle. Right? All of these scenarios that I listed, that happens by people just fucking up and taking a wrong path and just making a huge mistake in their life. And it happens to anybody at any age. People make mistakes. Those are all mistakes.
Yeah. The good turning point when people get forgiven is that they do change, but he's unapologetic.
Yeah, no, he's not apologizing for his crimes. He wasn't even sad or crying. There was a newspaper saying that he was shaking and crying. No, from the police guard and everybody who was actually in that court case, he was emotionless. He did
Right.
not give a fuck.
Right.
And when he was being answered about this and everything, and when he was caught, it was almost like he was arrogant. It was like he was proud.
Mm-hmm.
Like he had his chest up. Like he never put his head down in shame. He was just ticked off that he went to jail.
Yeah. So much information. I love the fact that, you know, how did you even find me?
Well, honestly, I looked up because there were a couple other more videos on the Ian Watkins case, and anybody who wants to get the proof out, I'm here for an interview and just showing you everything that I have.
Right.
And then I found you, and I'm like, she seems to be talking about a lot of stuff, and I'm just gonna relay my knowledge onto her and see if she catches on. And you did, and I'm like, awesome. This needs to be discussed, and I need to tell more people about this because this guy is a complete monster.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So yeah, this guy has a cult, and I've been making sure that everybody knows, yeah, this guy has a cult. It may seem funny, but he has a real cult.
Right. Yes. We have Voice of the Fat Mantis, one of my podcast friends, has decided to drop in and say hi. So, hello, Mantis. How are you?
Hey, dude, what's up?
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap things up?
Oh no, I'm good. Kind of want to eat something. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very hungry.
Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair. We have gone on for about an hour, so I will let you go. Thank you so much for giving us this information. We were talking about the Ian Watkins case, Mantis. We're talking about Ian Watkins, the pedophile guy I talked about. I think that was the last Pedo-Files episode that I did. So I have a reliable source here, Investigative Walker, talking about all of her information that she has relayed to me. Yeah, okay. He just says he'll watch it from the beginning at some point.
Awesome, dude.
You
Thank
come
you
in
so
later.
much. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, and I will let you go.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. That was it. I thank you for viewing, and thank you, Fat Mantis, for coming in. I know it was a little late, but that's all right. Appreciate the appearance, of course. And I will see you guys in the trenches next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.